This episode of the podcast is brought to you by our friends at Regrow, the premier cloud-based cannabis supply chain management system.
Are your SOPs tied directly to your cultivation plans? Can you easily manage your inventory and workforce and vendors from a single system? Or can you manage compliance across multiple licenses and states? If you answered no to any of these questions, then I suggest you stop what you're doing and call the team at Regrow. Compared to other software systems on the market, when you choose Regrow as a strategic business partner, you'll get all aspects of regulatory compliance built in, with the added value of workforce management, inventory, SOP management, and reporting and metrics that allow for companies to scale successfully. So if you're using whiteboards, spreadsheets, and email to manage your cultivation, distribution, and manufacturing processes, then it's a good time to consider incorporating Regrow. Visit their website at regrow.io. That's regrow.io. Regrow, the premier cloud-based cannabis supply chain management system. Hello, my fellow people of the plant. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Cannabinoid Connect podcast, your favorite podcast that includes industry-facing conversations with the industry's leading experts that aim to educate and inform the public regarding the plant's endless benefits. My guest today is Tom Gavin. He's the CEO and Vice Chairman at CannaTrac. Tom Gavin returns. How are you, man?
Excellent, Kevin. How are you, man?
I'm good. I actually was looking at my library of videos within my YouTube channel, and it's 6 months ago is when we recorded, man.
Oh
So
my God.
can you believe that? It's been a while.
No, no. The last year's been so crazy. It's kind of hard to put time together as far as when everything's happening.
Exactly.
So that's insane. Wow, I can't believe it's 6 months already.
6 months. And when you think about the cannabis industry, 6 months is like 2 years, of
Oh,
like,
no doubt.
yeah, like everything that's happened in terms of like talks of reform, legalization, I mean, all the above. And one area that I know has gotten a lot of attention, especially within Twitter, is safe banking, right? And a lot of people just wanting that bill to pass. And I know that Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer has been talking about, safe banking for a while now, and he's used the term shortly and soon. So, why don't we start there, Tom? Like, tell us, obviously you're the CEO and vice chairman at CannaTrac. You're on the front lines when it comes to financial technology and merchant processing and all the above. So what are you seeing in terms of, reform, talks of reform and safe banking?
Well, on our side, as far as the Safe Banking Act goes, I've heard that there's more push actually for legalization, which I can't say that I necessarily expected as quickly as they have proposed it. But I know that there's something coming back up on that. But as far as safe banking goes, our big thing is we really need to push for full legalization or to reschedule where we're at. I mean, the push for just the Safe Banking Act is really not going to do much more than what we're already seeing.
Right.
So the banks that are banking right now, as long as they are following that, know your customer guideline, those, the FinCEN regs and the AML BSA procedures, as they would with any other client. And obviously you have other forms that they have to file for cash as well as suspicious activity because of our industry. As long as they're doing all of that, they're not really having many problems. As far as I know, I don't think a bank has ever even been shut down specifically for banking marijuana. They've been shut down for, in essence, not knowing their customer, not doing the due diligence that they were supposed to in the first place. So really, the Safe Banking Act itself doesn't do more than put in writing what they're already doing,
Right.
And kind of, hey, follow our laws and we won't give you problems. As far as, the MORE Act and some of those things, those are the big ones that we want to see, move forward. That's really going to open everything up. Legalizing marijuana, or as I said, rescheduling marijuana will be the way that our industry, just blooms.
Right.
No pun intended, I guess. But
Well,
we go ahead. I'm
yeah.
sorry. I'm
Well, no,
sorry.
I think you're right. And it's an interesting perspective when you talk about safe banking, because I had Jeremy Burke on, who's a senior editor at Insider, and he's, on the front lines reporting a lot of these stories. And he agrees, but he had a different take. And that is like, there's no really incentive for the large institutions to enter into the cannabis space if they're not already, without full legalization, right? Because cannabis is still listed as a Schedule 1 narcotic, so
Hmm.
there's still some hesitancy there, right? And then from your perspective, you're like, it's already happening. There's banks that are already doing this, and the ones that aren't probably won't do so just because of safe banking. We need more than that, right?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. I mean, realistically, if you break it down and how our financial system works, all of these banks are in it, whether they want to be or not. They're either backing or they're over insuring or they're holding deposits for. They're involved. There's no doubt about it. They're involved because the little banks, your community and state-sized banks, or even your credit unions, a lot of them are going to other windows or to other banks to book big deals and things like that. So that money, for lack of a better word, because it's an evil word, but it's all commingled no matter how you how
Hmm.
you you look at it.
Right.
So I think that to say that they won't be involved, they're already involved, but they don't. You're 100% correct, and so is the other gentleman saying that there's no real incentive for them to move further into it. They're doing what they have to do, what they would normally do, just being a bank, and taking those other deposits, or again, insuring, or you know underwriting the larger deals, things like that, and using the banks, or doing it for banks that are banking the industry. Indirectly, it's all interconnected, but I don't see like your Bank of America or your Chase jumping in and
Right.
throwing their hands up and say, "Hey, we're open to cannabis money. Send your deposits." I don't see it, not until full legalization or rescheduling of the actual drug.
Right. Yeah, and that's like the $1 million question, right? Is like, okay, if the bill is gonna be more comprehensive and include more, language, whether it relates to social equity or restorative justice or banking laws, it's all kind of tied in. That seems like it would just take longer, I guess, to kind of roll out, but it seems like the right way it should be done. you know um but I've also seen other states where they remove the social equity component and they just focus on the regulation, and the business operations of it, right? So it's just going to be interesting to see what the federal government decides to do. And again, according to Chuck Schumer, it's going to happen very soon, shortly. But we're all kind of just waiting. I don't
Yeah,
know.
soon is a very general term in that context.
Right.
But no, I agree with you. I think that I think that the problem with taking some of the social equity pieces out, really, I think, could it pass faster? Potentially. However, you take those out, trying to get them in retroactively would probably be close to impossible. So I
Hmm.
don't think that they can technically do that and still get what they want on both sides.
Right.
Um, However, I know that there have been the new bill that's supposedly going to go up for legalization again in the next, supposedly handful of days. We'll see that there have been some minor adjustments to the equity portions, kind of expanding into the SBA stuff and things like that. So there will be ability inside and outside the cannabis business for reform, for basically people that have had issues in the past, or people who have suffered from the war on drugs. There will be other pieces in there so that they can get basically assistance, tutoring, things like that, to go
Right.
into not just cannabis but other industries, which will be pretty cool.
Yeah.
So
No, that's great. It's definitely something that needs to be addressed as larger discussions of reform and legalization are taking place, because it's all part of it, right? And I want to ask you. So we touched on talks of reform within cannabis and THC. I also read an article last week that a bill was introduced to basically put pressure on the FDA to start immediately regulating CBD and basically listing it as a dietary supplement. So on the hemp side, Tom, like how does that bill and if it were implemented, how would that affect CannaTrac's business and from a financial banking perspective within hemp?
Well, I wouldn't affect CannaTrac as much as a whole, but one of our subsidiary, CTI Processing.
Right.
CTI is obviously it's a wholly owned subsidiary of CannaTrac. However, it deals in basically any type of merchant processing outside of, specifically the cannabis industry as far as THC bearing. So for CBD and things like that, we would run it through our CTI subsidiary. But the only issue that we've really had with that is, the Delta 8 and things like that, where you're kind of pushing the limits, if not going over, obviously. And then some of the oral supplements. I'm drawing a complete blank on the word right now, but those are the only ones that we've really seen any issue with. Obviously, the FDA has to get involved because they haven't done anything since the bill passed originally.
Right.
And without structure, it makes it nearly impossible for any financial institution, whether it be a merchant bank or a bank or hell, the taxing authority for that matter, any of those people to try and figure out what to do with what they have.
Right.
There's no pathway yet. We have a very general laid out pathway through the farm bill, but we don't have any more than that. So you do need somebody to come in and kind of lay stuff down. And that way that realistically they can set those parameters on the financial side and on the unfortunately the political side, the taxation side.
Right.
So,
and the parameters, it's like it seems like it's all over the place, right? Because when you with the lack of like guidelines and specific language around what we can do and can't do in terms of various products and inventory within an online site or whatever, it's up to the merchant banks really to make those decisions, right? Like, yes, we'll accept this product, no Delta 8, no smokable, no. I mean, isn't that kind of how it works right now? It's kind of ad hoc.
100%. No, that's exactly how it works. And you have certain merchant processing companies, certain merchant banks that are obviously a little bit more lenient than others. However, there still is no, set schedule, set, standard of where everything can be, which it realistically, I mean, looking from a business perspective, trying to look at it from their side, on our side, obviously it sucks. There's no nice way to put it. It sucks.
Right.
You got to tell a customer no because they're delivering a product that everybody wants and we can't do anything for you. However, you're following, the law for all intents and purposes.
Right.
It doesn't make sense. But with the other side of it, and you look at the merchant bank and what they have to lose because it may fall into something that affects their insurance or something that affects their investor base. They may have certain things in their bylaws, their contracts, their agreements with outside entities that doesn't allow them to do that. So, I do understand the concept, and without intervention, if you will, I don't necessarily see that changing drastically. I mean, obviously, as the stigma continues to lift on the whole cannabis industry as a whole, not just, the THC component, but CBD, hemp-derived products, all of that. As that continues to change, I'm sure banking will become more lenient, obviously, because it's more socially acceptable. However, that's not going to be an overnight process. And if we really want to make all of this run and be fluid, if you will, somebody needs to step in and make those, those set standards.
Right. And so let's dive a bit deeper into that, Tom. So like say someone was starting out, obviously like you said, the cannabis industry is getting more momentum in terms of public support, and then there's more, businesses that are coming online, whether it be in the CBD space or the cannabis space. So what would one like need to do to set up a merchant processor like CTI, your subsidiary, and what kind of compliance and all types of, what would the process look like for someone to go through that and set up an online shop with y'all?
Realistically, they would have to put together everything that they wanted to put out there and have it approved product by product. Right now, it's somewhat of a nightmare.
Yeah.
It really is. There are a lot of products that are, accepted as a general rule. Topical isolates, things like that, where there is zero, THC. Those generally don't carry the same requirement for due diligence. However, them having to supply the COAs on them, just like anything else, they're still going to have to do it. So you need, lab results on basically everything on your site, and it's a lot. It's a lot of work.
Right.
For us to do that, basically, we sit down with the merchant. They fill out an application. That application goes in. At that point, prior to already submitting it, we kind of let them know this is what we're looking for. And in general, it's an overview of their website. Now, if they're brick and mortar, it's a little different. They're going to need the same type of things. And unfortunately, when it's brick and mortar, we've kind of noticed it's not as accessible as it is for the online stores, because everything's held within the parameters of your site as opposed to in a paper file or on a hard drive in the back office that nobody remembers what they saved the name under. So it's definitely been interesting, but they can do it. It can be done as long as they stay within the parameters and work through it. There's certain products, unfortunately, that we're seeing a lot of kickback on or pushback on, and like I said, the Delta 8 is a real big one right now for us. And I know that, I want to say, isn't there like a Delta 12 or something else, something above the 8 that's come out recently?
I've heard something of that, but I haven't looked into it. I don't know enough to talk about it, but I think you're right. Yeah. It's amazing the human ingenuity of what we're doing with these compounds, and in fact, you mentioned Delta 8, and I just read that we heard in Texas that it's virtually outlawed now. It's banned. So Texas, I think, is like state number 13 that has banned Delta 8 at this point.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, the upside to that, though, is at least they're looking into further researching, psychedelics as well as cannabis,
Right.
as far as the CBD component. So
Yeah.
I did read that. I don't know if that was this morning or very recently. I just read something in one of the publications that, Texas is looking into, further research, which is great. I mean, obviously on the psychedelic side, I don't know enough about it to really talk about it, but it's extremely interesting,
It is.
So
It is. Yeah. And it shows that, this is really becoming a bipartisan issue when it comes to alternative ways to address mental health or, just health and wellness overall, right? We're starting to relearn that the cannabis plant has so many benefits when it comes to the therapeutic and medicinal properties. And then even with psychedelics, like you mentioned, we're just scratching the surface there. So even states like Texas that are traditionally red, we're open to it now. And that's where I'm really interested to see how it plays out on the federal level. Of course, the Biden administration, along the campaign trail, talked a lot about cannabis reform and how they were friends of the cannabis industry. And that has remained to be seen at this point. It's kind of been the opposite, if anything. So yeah, it's interesting times.
Yeah, well, let's be honest. Anytime politics is involved, there's interesting things going on behind the scenes, obviously.
Right.
But hopefully they make the right decision. That's all. At this point, that's all we can do.
Right.
The administration's not going anywhere, so
No.
fingers crossed. Let's hope
I know.
that they do what they said they were going to do, and that's all we can hope for at this point.
That's it. We got to just sit back and hope and just continue to spread the education, right? And
Absolutely.
when we talk about we're hoping that the politicians do the right thing, there's so many just unintended consequences that have emerged from prohibition, or the way in which some states have regulated since they've gone adult use. And you know the black market is thriving, right, in particular areas like in California, with high taxation rates, and it's just so hard to compete and be a business operator there, that we're seeing the black market kind of bleed through, so
Oh yeah.
what are your thoughts on that, and kind of what you're seeing maybe even throughout the country?
Well, thoughts on that. I mean, it's prevalent here. I mean, if you look at, I'm talking to you right now from Illinois, and it's very prevalent here on the rec side. Our taxes are insane,
Yeah.
So I don't, unless there's some sort of reform on the state level, or some sort of bar set, maybe even a flat tax on recreational. I think it's going to be very difficult to keep the black market out,
Mm-hmm.
because you can buy on the black market for so much less than going to your dispensary as a rec user. Now, as the medicinal user, I don't think that that's going to change as much. I think that if you're truly using it as, a medicine, I just look at it from my perspective. If I was truly using it as a medicine, I would want to make sure that what I'm getting is what I'm getting, and it's exact to what it's supposed to be, because I'm using it for specific symptoms.
Right.
If I have to pay a little bit more, that's not the end of the world, because again, I know what I'm getting.
Right.
I have an end result that I want to hit, and this is how I'm going to get there. So, at least in Illinois, that tax is obviously significantly different.
Mm-hmm.
So the cost isn't so bad. But on the rec side, my biggest fear is New York. I mean, they have the biggest black market around.
Right.
I don't know if I should say that.
You'd have people in California going, no, we have the biggest one, because there's that rivalry.
Right. So no, I mean, like, to my knowledge, they have one of the biggest black markets in the United States, and the tax there is going to just, I can't see it doing anything more than giving people a little taste and sending them back out. And that sounds terrible, but realistically, it's got to be put in line. They got to get the taxes in line. Otherwise, they're just actually growing the black market.
Exactly. That's that unintended consequence, right? And what do you know specifically what Illinois' tax rate is?
I want to say it's like 30%.
Wow.
I mean, it's something absurd.
Yeah, because I know that California is definitely in the high 30s. I think they're like at 38 or 39. Don't quote me on that for those listening, but
all I know is, like, for a vape cartridge that on medical would be like $68. I want to say it was like 91.
Wow.
So give or take, whatever that equates to, that actually is higher than 30%, I believe.
It is.
So, yeah.
It's crazy.
So,
and now it seems like this is the time where states can really learn from one another. You know what I mean? Like, because I mean, obviously, we're all trying to figure this out, and not one state has done it perfectly. But like, I feel like now is the time for a lot of these states to just really collaborate and take best practices from one another to apply them to their given state. And maybe looking at states with high taxation rates isn't, something that they can learn from. But again, the population and the size, I get it. I mean,
No, I agree with that. They have to. I mean, this is something that realistically it should be a state issue, because every state has a different budget. I get that. You have tons of people here in Illinois where you don't have tons of people in Montana,
Mm-hmm.
So it makes sense that they would have to charge more money. However, as a general rule, I realistically think that if the Fed stepped in, taxed it, or told them, this is on the tax side, this is what you do, how you implement the rest of your rules, that's up
It's
to
up to
you,
you. Yeah.
you
I
know?
like that.
So,
Yeah.
so make it a state thing with some federal oversight, maybe, and
Yeah.
just trying to keep people in line so you don't completely screw up the industry.
Right.
I mean, realistically, if we bring this all together and we increase the black market here in Illinois, it's going to spill over into the other states.
Mhm.
People are leaving here and going to other states. So in essence, what we do here affects everybody else,
Right.
right? So I think that kind of makes it somewhat of a federal issue, and I think they do need to step in, and I think by rescheduling it, that would make things a lot easier. By legalizing it, maybe a lot easier, but I do think that you were right when we talked early on. They really need to lay out how they want to do it, and that has to be done up front, because trying to fix something, go back and retro fix something, it just, most of the time it doesn't work.
Right.
Hopefully it would, but the odds aren't in your favor.
Sure.
So I think that there's a. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Well, no, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to cut you off. Finish your
No,
thought.
no,
Yeah.
no. It's okay.
I agree with you, Tom. I think because this has been the plan has been in prohibition for 100 years due to federal regulation, the federal government needs to step in some way and put some guidelines here, because again, we're relearning this plant, right? And kind of
Mhm.
everything that entails it. And so I totally agree. The one thing that I kind of get concerned about is the rescheduling aspect. I would prefer, the descheduling completely. Or am I getting those words changed? Because
No, no, no,
re-
no, no. I
okay,
100% would be in favor of completely abolishing, you
yeah,
know,
and
uh, marijuana as an actual drug, or cannabis as an actual drug. However, I would be very surprised if that goes that route that
that
quickly.
happened. Yeah, no, I
So
that's and
I
that's fair.
kind
Yeah,
of baby stepping,
right.
I would love to see full legalization. I think that would make the most sense, and it would make things the easiest for everybody to deal with. However, I don't think every state would be on board with that. So if we take those baby steps and kind of reintroduce it, as you're saying, we're relearning,
Right.
take it as a complete, do-over, if you will.
Right. Right.
So
Take two, which I know a lot of people in the industry would love to do, especially now that we're all part of it.
right.
Um, Tom, what is the plans for CannaTrac this year? What have you guys been focused on? You mentioned your subsidiary CTI processing. So like what are your big plans for 2021 and beyond, and what are you really looking forward to?
So actually let's start with the subsidiary. CTI has really gone out and started making some differences, thank God. A lot of great programs to offer different people. Basically, what we're going to do there is we're just building the clientele, um, adding more clients on a daily basis. Basically, um, we offer an array of products. We're still growing on the banking side as far as the merchant banks that we're going to be able to use. And that's really about it. It's pretty cut and dry. Merchant processing is, although there are a lot of little nuances within it, it's a pretty cut and dry business. You go out and you try and save people money, and if you can, you can. If you can't, then odds are good they're not going to be your client. But on the CannaTrac side, this is going to be a huge year for us. We basically have begin looking at going public. We have uh, the new platform coming out with Valid. That's a huge deal, which actually already in the Google Play Store. We're waiting on Apple. We're in review, as they say, with
Nice.
Apple.
And tell
So
us
as soon
tell us
as
a little more about that. Yeah, what is that exactly?
so basically our mobile app was completely redone. We went into partnership with Valid um, almost 2 years ago now, in order to basically build an app that was much more robust, but also easier to use. They had the ability to do things that we just did. You know, they had budgets that were way larger than what we could do on our own at the time, and they are a international company. So expanded our ability to branch out once we get into the United States, and we can continue branching overseas, and that is a plan. That's there's so much I want to say, but I don't know. I don't know at this point exactly what I can and can't say. So
Right.
that being said, I mean, there's a ton going on. We're continuing to expand our intellectual property. We're now in 35 countries across 4 continents with IP, with trademark protection, patent pendings, service mark protection, registrations. So we're growing and growing and growing, and it's just exciting. I mean, there's a ton coming down the pipeline, and probably actually over the next few weeks, you will hear some definitively one major announcement and potentially a couple others. So we're very excited to share that.
That is very exciting. Yes, and I regularly follow the cannabis stock market, so keep my eye out for CannaTrac going public at some point. That's exciting, man. Congrats on that. Yeah.
Thanks, man. Thanks.
Yes.
So
Well, so pull out your crystal ball, Tom, and you've talked about CannaTrac, your subsidiary, CTI Processing, the plans, which are exciting for growth and expansion. Tell us what your future predictions are, kind of at the federal and state level in the months or even years to come.
well, I'm hoping, fingers crossed, as I said earlier, I'm hoping that by the end of the year we have some sort of revamp of a legislation bill, at least a rescheduling. I'm not 100% sure it's gonna go through this year, but I hope that happens. Like I said, I know that the new legalization bill is going to be coming in soon. Hopefully, not that word not being used in the same context
Shortly.
as it has the rest of the year. Yeah, shortly. But I know that legalization bill is going to hit relatively soon, at least, or shortly, as the case may be. And I think that that's going to get a lot more traction. I'm not 100% sure it's going to pass the first run through. But if they do make the changes that they seem to be making, it has a hell of a lot better chance this time than it did last time. So we'll see how that goes. And then as far as banking opening up, I think that at this point, banking is fairly open. There's a lot of banks that are doing business with the industry that really aren't openly saying that we're doing it, but they're there. And that's a hell of a lot more than we've had in the past. I think basically as the stigma drops or continues to drop, we're going to get a lot more done. I think this is going to be a good year. I think next year is going to be even a better year. I think that, COVID showed, last year's COVID pandemic showed that this is something that's not going away. People still got out and they went to their dispensary and they, spent their money. This is the new age,
Mm-hmm.
This is going to be the boom. So I'm really looking forward to it. This year I think will be great. Next year better. Next 3 to 5 years, I just think we're going to expand and cross borders, which we've already started to. And I'm not just speaking of CannaTrac, obviously, I'm talking as a whole. I think that, we've already obviously started talking internationally. A lot of these conferences you're seeing over the last 2-3 years have been bringing people in from all over the world. And that's gaining traction. And hopefully with the reopening of a lot of stuff over this year and next year, we'll gain even more traction, and we'll have, more heads together in the think tank, putting stuff together for us. So I think we already know it's a boom. I think this is going to be an international boom. And I think that we're going to be able to sit back in a handful of years and say, wow, we were part of this. I think that's going to be the coolest thing of all.
Absolutely, man. Very well said. I couldn't have said it better myself. And throughout that time, I look forward to just keeping this conversation and this dialogue going with you, because
Always, man.
It's always a pleasure, and yeah, it was great to catch up. Maybe we don't wait 6 months to do it again. Maybe we wait like 3 or something. But yeah, just we'll give some, the industry some time to evolve, especially within the banking sector. And then I want to get you guys back on to talk about, where you're playing a role in adding value within the industry. So
Would love to. Would love to. Anytime, Kevin.
awesome. Well, Tom, thank you so much. Where can people find y'all's website and social media if they want to follow you and learn more?
CannaTrac.com. You can find us also at CannaCardRewards.com, which obviously flagship product. They can find us on Facebook, Instagram with CannaCard, and Twitter. Canna, I believe it's CannaTac actually. So slight twist there. But yeah, you can find us on all of those, as well as obviously LinkedIn. So kind of spread across.
You're covering all the bases, which you got to do in
We're trying.
In
We're
digital
trying.
day and age, right?
Right. Yeah. When you had asked earlier, I'm going, oh my God, I don't know if I know them all off the top of my head. So
it's always safe to just say we're on Facebook, Twitter. You did that, so they'll find you, and we'll always put them on the in the description box in our YouTube channel. So
awesome.
Yeah, thank you so much again, Tom. I look forward to running back with you in the future. All right.
Sounds great, Kev. Have a great day. Thank you.
Okay, you too, and thank you all for listening. Bye.